The cringe knows no bounds. Still, right out of the gate, we have the weird fake laughs.
First date.
Double date.
Double date. Awesome.
Shall we make a little welcome snap?
We have this move. We have these faces. What? Why? It's either contrived Meg or awkward Meg. There seems to be no in-between, except when she looks exceptionally irritated, I suppose. Okay, so episode 1 is much more of the same as season 1, but with 2 notable changes, which is kind of funny. It would seem that Meghan was forced into a lot of voiceover work for this season. This sort of patchwork vibe is very present and very obvious. This part 2, marketed as season 2, had to do this cut and paste patchwork voiceover situation because the criticisms were so loud the first time around. And I notice when they do the voiceovers, it's very obvious when they are happening because they zoom in. The shot gets zoomed in unnaturally close to their hands or the food or just anything. Or it's when their backs are turned. So it's like the back of someone's head. And then you hear Meghan's voice saying something ever so slightly more appropriate than what originally came out of her mouth. So this episode 1 has Christina Tosi and David Chang, who are both successful chefs in their own right, and they come to visit Meg and Daniel. Daniel from part 1, the makeup artist. Christina and David definitely dominate the cooking and lead the show throughout those parts, both of whom are not only accomplished chefs, but also familiar with food TV, so that does help in those moments, but only so much. For a show that's meant to have Meghan do all the heavy lifting, it creates a little bit of a weird disconnect for the viewer to have the guests become the focus and take charge of the bulk and most important parts of the episode, although that would have made sense. But the problem is that the way they package the show is that Meghan is showing the viewer these things. Meghan is teaching the viewer things, but then the guests come in and they lead the way with the cooking in the kitchen, so it feels weird. It feels disjointed and a little bit confusing. Had they packaged it as and filmed it from the get-go as Meghan is inviting these chefs to teach her how to cook, it would have had a totally different dynamic. But because that's not how they filmed it, they have just added voiceovers to bring it into a little bit closer to that vibe, but they still can't close the gap. Anywho, the director or the Netflix team obviously won the battle with Meghan to properly introduce her guests this season because they added a voiceover that felt a little abrupt. Like, there's no mistaking it for not being added in post-production. But they added a voiceover with an introduction of who the guests are, their restaurants, their businesses, and their accolades, which is the right thing to do, and it should have been done in part 1. It was one of my big complaints, like, who is this chef? I would like to know more who this person is, because it's just kind of bizarre to have somebody on the TV and have no idea who they are. So it made me wonder, why didn't they do that from the start? And I think the best guess I have is that Meghan didn't want to do that sort of more formal introduction of, oh, this is so-and-so, they own this restaurant, or they're the chef at this restaurant, and they wrote these cookbooks, or whatever. Or they're on this show. Like, she didn't want to do that because she wanted it to look like she knew these people, and it was just so cash that she had these people coming over to her, do her show, who were big deals. And if you knew, sort of a thing. Like gatekeeping in a way. I think that she thought that that would make it seem more cool or more spontaneous or something, or maybe almost like she thought it would seem impressive, like she was part of this crowd. Like she already knew who these people were, so why would she need to tell you? I feel like it came from that sort of a place because it doesn't really fully make sense why not to properly introduce people in the first season. Because the way it came across was so confusing, and it was also kind of rude. To introduce the guests, it offers some context and shows why they are on the show, but it's also respectful. It's proper etiquette. And it also delivers a degree of value back to the guest as well. So that was an improvement, to be fair, that I noticed here in episode 1. Hopefully it continues. And as I said, this whole season, all these episodes have a lot of voiceovers, like way more than part 1. It seriously feels like a patchwork of voiceovers and close-ups so that you could still use the film footage. It's kind of crazy. I've really never seen anything like it. There's this disembodied Meghan saying something much less awkward and much less about her, and offering a little bit more information than some of the previous episodes as well. It's still not a step-by-step of something that you could go recreate, but there are a couple more moments where they sprinkled in a little bit more information via voiceover in post-production, or they just left in moments where she's like, oh, we're going to bake this at 350 for such and such amount of time. That was completely absent in part 1 from what I saw, and it is sprinkled in a little bit more in part 2. So that is also an improvement, to be fair. Like, this is a really good example right here.
Yeah.
Turn the heat off.
And it steams.
Yeah, that's all you need. A little bit of that, and we're ready to go.
That's a good pro tip. She's so pretty, our little gal.
Ready to go.
That's a good pro tip.
So as you can see, it's kind of obvious. They zoom in, and then it's this voice of just, oh, well, that's a pro tip. Totally an added thing in post-production. It's so obvious, and it's also kind of funny when you know the full context of what went on here, that they understood that Meghan was turning people off and they tried to fix it like this. Like, hey, say something nice. Just come up with something nice to say, okay? But they still couldn't hide these types of faces, though. She still has the vibe of not actually enjoying the cooking part, or maybe it's actually the sharing of the spotlight that she doesn't like. I'm not sure. But why this face so often? Now, I don't think that she should sit around having a fake smile on her face the whole time either. But given what we know and what we saw in the first round, it's clear that there is an element to this whole experience that Meg doesn't actually really like. She seems to get rather uncomfortable, this sort of irritated look about her quite often, and I think that's a huge part of why this doesn't come across as authentic Meghan. Because what you would expect if somebody really enjoyed being in the kitchen and doing these types of things, you would expect a relaxed and neutral expression when they're not smiling or talking, not one that reads as a negative emotion. I think something about this comes across as quite forced, whether it's not being allowed to talk about herself constantly, or not getting the praise that she wants from the guests, or just the takes and tasks in general that she's doing. We may never know what it is about this that's giving her this sour face, but she can't seem to hide it. Leave your theory in the comments because I'm really curious to hear why you think this cranky face sneaks out, despite this supposedly being her ideal existence. If we were to listen to just her words, this is her dream come true. But if you look at her face, in between moments where she's talking or like purposefully smiling to the camera, she looks displeased. She also did, throughout this series, there's these little cutaways to like a crafty sort of tutorial. She did water marbling, and for those who don't know, it's very similar to tie-dye, but you place the colors in a pan of thickened water and then you lay the fabric on top. And as per expected, this was a lot more of a watch Meghan do this thing than a real tutorial, which no one has any degree of appetite for. We don't want to just watch Meghan do stuff. That's not interesting. But also, I wonder just how relatable or attainable water marbling really is for most people at this particular moment in time. Whether that was the best choice of tutorial, watch me do this type of thing. I don't know, read the room. You know what I mean? I think that she's chosen for her crafty things stuff that's a little bit out of reach for most people because it's stuff that requires a lot of specialized equipment and materials and could get really pricey really quickly. The review from Town & Country pointed out that a lot of the guests expected in this round of drab episodes work with Netflix themselves, which I did not pick up on because I'm not a big Netflix gal. Which means that these guests are a little bit more experienced and a little bit more comfortable around the camera, which may help tone down the awkward and create a little bit more of a smooth experience, but it also means that that is how they had to get guests. They had to draw upon, Netflix had to pull strings. We have working relationships with these people. Let's convince them to come in and do this episode because nobody else was wanting to come onto the show. It's clear that Netflix took a little bit more control of this second batch and reduced a lot of Meghan's sound bites about herself and her life. To save themselves the backlash, perhaps because they know that that's not what people are watching this type of content for. Maybe they're trying to salvage the reputation of the show for the holiday special, who knows? But they definitely worked hard at it. Let's see what the Telegraph had to say about it. More tone deafness from the Montecito Marie Antoinette. Prince Harry remains conspicuously absent from a needy, if marginally less mad, second series of With Love Meghan. Anyone for a turmeric marshmallow? Time to stock the fridge with sea urchins? How about relaxing by binding your own books or making a pressed flower pendant for your dog? Highly relatable choices, indeed. It looks as if someone at Netflix, mindful of the fact that the last series came 383rd in the streamer's most watched list, has demanded we need more Harry. You know, I'm not sure that that's why. I have to be honest, I'm not sure that that's why she talked about Harry. I think that she just talks about him because that's her husband. I don't know. I don't think that because this was all filmed at once. So I don't think anybody went back and was like, oh, talk about Harry more. I don't think that's happening. So I'm not sure I fully agree with this review. And you wonder if the reason for his absence is that Harry, not being the sharpest knife in the drawer, might step into this carefully temperature-controlled environment and start saying the wrong things, such as, whose house is this? Why are you pretending you've never practiced any of this stuff before? Who makes their own salt and vinegar crisps? Are we still friends with anyone who came to our wedding? The second series claims to be all about friendship, and Meghan may have some vacancies in this area. We have friends coming, new friends! I love making friends, she announces in episode 1. This series is marginally less mad than the first. Who can forget Meghan throwing a children's party but not inviting any children, but more needy? She prepares personalized drinks for everyone who walks through the door and sends them home with elaborate gifts. When the Shettys mention they host a games night each Friday for 40 friends, you can see Meghan mentally computing how to get on the list. She's keen to let us know how inclusive and generous-spirited she is. Meghan is famously kind to staff, just ask anyone at Buckingham Palace. These friends, old and new, are subjected to a relentless work schedule. The relaxed get-togethers are run with ruthless efficiency. The moment a dish gets into the oven, the guests are frog-marched to the craft barn to make something. As luck would have it, Meghan is skilled at all of these activities. In episode 1, she launches into some competitive flower arranging, and her effort is judged to be the best, like a child who insists on winning the party games at her own birthday. Come to think of it, many of the episodes have the air of a 10-year-old girl's birthday party, from potato printing aprons to making pretty soaps. Visitors heap praise on her at every turn. You just make everything so beautiful, says Smith. I'm so inspired by you, says Dorak. And these are those sound bites that Meghan's brief asked the guests to say, allegedly. Allegedly, she handed guests a list of things that were like, oh, if you can't think of anything to say, here's some ideas. She speaks for the first time about her experience as a model on Deal or No Deal. Tegan was a fellow briefcase girl, but curiously, Meghan didn't see her for 20 years after that until reaching out a couple of years ago. I'm not sure they like each other at all, but Tegan goes through the motions. There is a moment when Meghan says that the flower pendants are going to take 24 hours to set, which means I'm going to have to send this to you. And you can fleetingly see the expression on Tegan's face move from horror to relief as she realizes that she won't have to stay here until the morning. Hours after her arrival, Tegan struggles to remember one of her children's birth dates, despite having them all tattooed on her arm, and shouts through to Legend to help her out. Turns out he's been banished to another room this whole time. The episodes live or die by the quality of the guests, so ones featuring larger-than-life Andres and food writer Samuel Nostrad are the best because they are two warm, engaging personalities. David Chang, another celebrity restaurateur who is not overawed to be in Meghan's presence, is also a good watch. The three of them know about food, but the rest is boring and often pretty insufferable. And there is some chutzpah in Meghan, placing her own recipes on a level with those accomplished chefs. Like a Montecito Marie Antoinette, she emerges from her house to find that the production team has created an impromptu flower mart worth thousands of dollars from which she can pick some blooms to arrange. It's a gorgeous existence. Just occasionally, though, reality breaks through. At one point, she opens a kitchen drawer and panics. Oh, that's not pretty. That's not in the shot, she warns the director and quickly slams it shut. What's in there? A mess. A voodoo doll of the Princess of Wales? We will never know. The closing credits play out to the lyrics, "Don't let it be the last time. Please, let it be the last time." Thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye!